Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our James Beard Foundation Industry Support Webinar, Save Restaurants, the Restaurants Act. So we're so happy that you could join us here today. We are going to get started with the content of this webinar in just a few minutes. But in the meantime, I'm going to go through a few housekeeping items that if you've joined us for webinars in the past, this is all very familiar to you. So how does this webinar work? First off, this webinar is being recorded. So we'll send out a link to the recording after the program wraps, and then it'll be available on our James Beard Foundation Industry Support Webinar website in about 24 hours. So if you check there tomorrow, it should be there and you'll be able to share it, re-listen to it. If you have to pop out at any point, the full webinar will be available there. We'll save the questions for the end. So if you do have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, as always, click on that little question icon. That's the message box with the question mark in it, and you can send your questions to us. We'll moderate those questions and we'll get to those in the last 15 minutes or so of the webinar itself. So we'll address those questions at the end and get to as many of them as we're able to. And finally, if you are having any technical difficulties, if for some reason you're having issues with the audio, whatever it might be, sometimes the best bet is to log off and log back on. But if you are having any technical difficulties, send a message to the organizers. You should be able to do that using the chat function, or you can use the question function just as easily. And either myself or my colleague Elk will kind of help troubleshoot whatever tech issues you're having to the best of our ability. Bear with us, sometimes the technology just isn't cooperative, but we'll do what we can. And my name is Ashley Kosiak, and I'm an Impact Program Manager here at the James Beard Foundation. And I'm going to be sort of guiding us all through this conversation today that we have with 3, 4, almost 5 and a half amazing panelists. So just growing number of folks, which we're really excited about. And to really kick off this conversation about the Restaurants Act, and I'm going to say the full name once, the Real Economic Support That Acknowledges Unique Restaurant Assistance Needed to Survive Act of 2020. And we are so very fortunate to have with us here today Representative Congressman Earl Blumenauer, representing Oregon's 3rd District. And Congressman Blumenauer is the congressperson. He's the congressman who introduced the Restaurants Act. So probably no one knows more about the Restaurants Act than Congressman Blumenauer and his staff. So we're very excited to have him here right now to tell us a bit more about the Restaurants Act, what it is, and why, Congressman Blumenauer, why did you think it was so important to introduce this and to support restaurants in this way?
Okay. Am I live, Ashley?
You are live.
Great. Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion today. We were talking just briefly before we started about a fabulous 2-day seminar that the foundation hosted at Princeton last December with leaders in the culinary arts from around the country. And I was energized as a result of that interaction for those 2 days. And lo and behold, we have an opportunity to try and utilize the power, the strength, the energy of leaders in terms of the restaurants industry. We are facing a crisis. Independent restaurants are the cornerstone of a livable community. I represent Portland, Oregon, where the food scene is, let me just say, is pretty robust. You know, we take pride in the people who have been a part of it. I've got my dear friend Gregory, who's going to maybe add a little bit. He's been in the forefront in Portland and nationally. But it's impossible to imagine my community without the vibrancy of independent restaurants. It's where people gather. It's not just a place to eat. It nourishes the soul. It strengthens the fabric of the neighborhoods. Restaurants are often the first job for young people. It is an avenue, particularly for women and minorities, to be able to establish themselves in business. It protects the cultural heritage that we have. I mean, it is just, as I say, it's the anchor of a livable community. And we're in a desperate situation. There are 500,000 independent restaurants across America that provide that same anchor in communities large and small. They employ 11 million people. In April alone, 4.5 million were unemployed in restaurants. 27% of the whole entire national unemployment total. And the situation we face is that because of the unique vulnerability of the neighborhood restaurant, that we're going to end up losing maybe 85% of them, many of them permanently, if we don't step up to keep them alive. We are facing unprecedented economic challenges, racial unrest, and we've got the pandemic. Congress has been able to move pretty quickly in some areas. We moved $3 trillion for health, for special areas of the economy, and the House just passed another almost $3 trillion to help state and local. We've provided massive amounts of money for the airline industry. We had the PPP program to try and help small, ideally small business, although we've seen that some pretty good sized businesses took advantage of it. But the PPP program didn't meet the needs of restaurants. In many cases, they didn't even know that they'd be able to open in 8 weeks, let alone be able to utilize those resources. We needed something specific for restaurants. And I will say, working with the Independent Restaurant Coalition, we spent over a month refining this proposal. It will be $120 billion to be able to help independent restaurants be able to get back on their feet, to operate, to be able to support the supply chains, because it's not just the independent restaurants, it's the people who supply them. It's small family farms. I mean, the whole supply chain depends on independent restaurant operations. We've actually done a fascinating piece of economic research that says that if we're able to have this $120 billion, keeping them afloat, get on their feet, be able to pay the bills, keep the staff, start in these restrained circumstances, that it'll end up having a net economic benefit of $248 billion in exchange for the $120 billion that the federal government would do. It's more than double the overall economic impact because it would prevent more unemployment. It would allow people to pay their taxes and their suppliers. The overall economic impact, as I say, almost $250 billion. And we're making substantial progress. Just in the course of starting this webinar, I heard from Danielle that she tracked down one of my colleagues in Phoenix, a terrific member of Congress, Greg Stanton, who's agreed to co-sponsor. Bobby Stuckey has been reaching out to 3 of his Republican members of Congress to explain the importance to them. And I look forward to working with him to follow up with them when I'm back in Washington, D.C. We've had amazing response. 95 people have co-sponsored this bill already. And we have a parallel bill in the United States Senate with Republican Roger Wicker, who's been in the lead. So I've not seen anything like this in terms of the response we've received. We have 7 committee chairs who have co-sponsored the legislation, and to watch it come together under, let me just say, these are the most difficult circumstances any of us have worked under. Really hard to track down members of Congress where everything is virtual. But as I say, 95 people already, and more are signing on every day. I would hope that the people on this call would take it upon themselves to look at the information you can get from the Beard Society. You can get it from my office, the IRC, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, to be able to familiarize yourself and reach out to people in your community. Every member of the House and Senate should co-sign this legislation. It's important not just to talk to members of the House and Senate. I mean, if you get stuck to talking to one of us, make the best of it. But John Bosworth, for instance, is the key staff member in my office who's worked with me, and the staff members of the House and Senate are absolutely essential. And so talking to them helps as well, and sometimes it's as important. Let me just say how much I appreciate the partnership we've had with the Beard Foundation, with the Independent Restaurant Coalition. This has been one of the most exciting projects I've worked on in over 20 years in Congress. There's nothing that's more important for my community or yours. Thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to being your partner as we work to get this across the finish line. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you for being an amazing champion of the restaurant industry. I know that there are so many people that we can both see on this call and who are listening as attendees who are really grateful for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to try and eavesdrop for a while, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive into the conversation now. And as Congressman was saying, his website and his team has put out a really amazing sheet on the Restaurants Act that is a great resource, and I can try to pop in the link for that if you want to learn more of some of the details about it. But now we're going to start a conversation with some of this amazing panel of chef and culinary professionals. So we have Bette from the Bluebird Hospitality Group in Burlington, Vermont. So I love the geographic spread that we have here as well. Gregory Gourdet from Sage Restaurant Group and Departure out in Portland, Oregon. So I know, Chef, you've interacted with Congressman Blumenauer quite a bit. Chef Danielle Leoni from the Breadfruit and Rum Bar in Phoenix, Arizona. And finally, Bobby Stuckey from Frasca Food and Wine in Boulder, Colorado. And I know all of you are involved with the Independent Restaurant Coalition, as the Congressman mentioned. So thank you so much for being here and taking the time to join us to talk about why the Restaurants Act is so important to each of you and why more people should be involved in promoting it. So the Congressman did a really excellent job summarizing the bill. So I feel like I don't need to do that, which is great. But I'd like to start by asking each of you to tell us a little bit about, a little bit about your business and what the restaurant community is like in your state, kind of recognizing that as there's such a geographic range here and what's happening across the country is really at different places right now. So I'd love to hear just from each of you about your business, how your state's doing. And I'm just gonna start kind of probably go in alphabetical order for this first question. So Bette, I'm gonna kick that off to you to start.
Wonderful, hello. So I'm coming in from Vermont. Through this process, we learned that we have 1,400 restaurants and bars in Vermont. So we're a small state, but we've all been really proud of our food and our restaurant scene here. One of the biggest challenges is that we are very heavily reliant on tourism, particularly in the summer months. So the restrictions and the closing of the borders has had a significant impact. What we're all trying to focus on is making it through the year ahead. And what has come out of it is we've developed a really nice, strong coalition, and it has definitely brought a lot of restaurants together to work together. And we've been using that to build advocacy channels to really message the significant crisis that COVID presents for our industry here, and to make sure that folks in government and our community knows that we need everyone's support to see the other side of this. So I think that's my brief Vermont recap. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Chef. Now I'm going to go to Chef Gregory Gourdet. How are things in Oregon?
Things in Oregon are not great, so for me, I kind of represent two sides of the story. I was executive chef at a pretty high volume hotel for quite some time, and we were the good part about that was being able to supply so much amazing produce and ingredients from farms and ranches, and to be able to contribute that way. So that, with us being closed, that automatically, that's, just thousands of pounds of food that we're not able to, get from the community and sell. So that's one aspect of the food chain. But, being on the IRC and, we have a very tight-knit, close-knit community, talking to all my peers and, Portland, Oregon, like a lot of towns throughout this country, is really full of really small independent restaurants that, really can't afford to really be successful with social distancing, with capacity requirements. So it's been quite the struggle. Some people have pivoted to go models, but again, even though as busy as some to go might seem, it's really just kind of barely keeping things afloat, because overall sales are quite down, up to 70, 89% across the board. And just to echo what Congressman, brought up about, Oregon and Portland just being a really food-centric town, food and beverage generates $10 billion to Oregon. We have over 10,000 restaurants, and we have over 80,000 members of our community who work in food and beverage across the state. So with COVID and all of restaurants being closed, it's a pretty huge impact. From the Berry Council to the Seafood Council to the farmers and ranchers that I work with, everyone is in a pretty dire situation in terms of how to get their food out. And how to just bounce back. So something like the Restaurants Act would be extremely helpful in, getting everyone back on their feet, offering a little bit of longer term support as we see that, we're going into, months 4, 5, 6, and, honestly, we're all looking into the fall and just seeing how we're going to make it. So we need this to happen.
Absolutely. Chef Danielle, Leoni, I feel like we all see a lot of news about Arizona and how Arizona is doing right now, but you're there, you own and operate a really wonderful restaurant there. I've been fortunate enough to dine there. So how are you doing?
Well, first, thanks for having me on and hearing our voice here straight from Arizona. It's been like a wild roller coaster ride. We all shut down right around mid-March, and it's interesting in Arizona because in March, that's the time where we have a lot of tourism, we have a lot of visitors, our weather is so nice, and that's our opportunity to really start saving money up for the summertime. So that is when we make the most money, is around that time. So I closed down, I saw my colleagues and friends close down, and we were just trying to play it safe. I think in the restaurant community out here, for as far as independents go, we understand that it was our responsibility to stay closed and to flatten the curve, and we did our due diligence, and we were really trying hard to kind of just tuck away and see if we can make it, like, weather this storm. We don't have that much guidance here in Arizona as far as our leadership goes. It's kind of a Wild West situation. If you want to wear a mask or don't want to wear a mask, or you just can't be told in Arizona. And because of that, we've had this incredible resurgence of COVID-19. So even though we were technically able to participate in that phase 1 reopening, and some of us got PPP, and we wanted to use it because of the restrictions, we felt like we were forced to open in a way because it was our one opportunity to make a go at it. I just saw all my friends and all my colleagues just shut down again, and just they didn't just lose a lot of money, like you're losing like your wherewithal and your faith. Like it's very trying, you know, emotionally, like to go through all these things. So when I'm talking to my colleagues and friends out here, we're just wondering, like, how much longer can we actually survive this? And with the resources that we have been given through PPP or EIDL, it's not sufficient, and it wasn't restaurant specific or industry specific enough. So we have banded together, and we're awesome out here. Like, we love each other, like we will rally, and we're really putting our faith and weight behind this Restaurants Act.
Great, thank you, Danielle. And last but certainly not least, Bobby Stuckey from out in Boulder, Colorado. And Bobby, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. And I feel like Danielle just segued really perfectly into the first question that I actually wanted to ask you, which is, you know, obviously tell us a little bit how you're doing, what's happening in Colorado. But also, you know, Danielle was just saying that the PPP and the EIDL didn't really work for them, didn't work for a lot of restaurants. And so I'm wondering, why is the restaurant industry unique, and why does it need unique support? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Of course. Well, even though we're a neighboring state, we're a four-corner state with Arizona, we are, our leadership has been a little incredible. Governor Jared Polis, amazing, really communicating to our industry. Danielle, I wish he had a twin that could run Arizona, and I apologize that he can't. I have hope, and I hope the state of Colorado has hope. You know, of our Congress people, all of our Democratic Congress people have been so great to work with me in signing on for Congressman Blumenauer's bill. All of them, from Neguse, Crow, DeGette, Perlmutter, they were gems to work on. Now we're working on the Republicans, but they understand, you know, Colorado, 10% of the workforce here is independent restaurant employees. And there's so many ranchers and farmers that need us to be open. Different parts of the state are weathering this a little bit better than others. I think the mountains, because they have tourism right now, are doing real well. City like Denver, probably one of the hottest cities in America 4 months ago, really having a tough go at it right now. And we need to get this through. Right before I got on the call, I had a Colorado restaurateur reach out to me because he knows how active I am with the IRC. And he's like, can you give me an update? My PPP, I just ran the last payroll last week. It doesn't look good. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. And so, you know, in Colorado, I'm very thankful to our leadership. They've been amazing. Going to your question, and first I need to say thanks for having me on. And Congressman, I hope you know that the 500,000 restaurants across the US, you are our hero. You're amazing. And what you've done and the effort and the leadership has been fantastic. Because right now in the United States, we don't need politicians, we need leaders. And sometimes they can be the same, sometimes they can't be. And in this case, you are showing such incredible leadership that I'm in awe. Every time you jump on an IRC call, I almost start crying because your leadership's amazing. Why do we need this? Restaurants are unique. You know, I've spent my entire adult life in the restaurant industry and most of my adolescent life. I've never seen anything like this. I was a busboy in the 1987 stock crash. I was a sommelier at the French Laundry during 9/11. I was a restaurant owner in 2008. I've never seen anything like this. We're a unique industry that we went through all those troubles without needing any help. But we are different and we are unique. We were asked to close across the United States. When you turn a light off on a restaurant, it's not like an accounting firm or an insurance agency. You're not just locking the door and working from home. We can't work from home. but we also have to get rid of so much product that costs tens to twenties, thousands of dollars, depending on the restaurant, just gets given away to staff or donated. And while it's benevolent to donate things, that's not how you stay open. And then we were closed for, in some parts of the country, still not reopened. They're going backwards in Southern California, Texas, they're reclosing. Those are jolts to the balance sheet that people can't handle. We are also unique. When the congressman mentioned how much money we'll give back to the industry, we're an industry that, last year in 2019, when there was the record low unemployment and everything was great, our industry average was a 6% profit. And for those of you on the call that aren't restaurant people, I'll give you an idea. That means 94 cents of every dollar goes right back into the economy. We are different that way. Think about in 2008 when we had the TARP bailout for the banking industry. Very few banking CEOs would have the gumption and the bravery to run a company like the restaurant industry, where we are comfortable with such small margins. We're used to that. And that's why we are so unique. And if we get a chance to, and I hope we do, if we get a chance to get this bill across the line, this is the best money that the US government can bet on a horse. Our horses can make it through this because we're used to these tough times. We can do this, but right now it's too tough. You can't run a 6% profit, be closed for 2 months, and every month or so have to reclose because you've got a small outbreak in your restaurant. We've got so many things fighting against us.
All right, Danielle, I'm gonna go to you next. So Bobby did a really great job, kind of talking about why the restaurant industry is unique. You just mentioned that PPP and EIDL loans are not working for a lot of the restaurants that you're seeing in your community. I'd love to hear what your take on why more support is needed. And also, I know you've been doing a lot of work with other restaurants within Arizona to lobby not just your federal policymakers, but also your state policymakers. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that organizing too, and about the importance of activating at both the national level and the state level.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of us, like I said before, some of us did get PPP or EIDL, and some of us didn't. So it's kind of a grab bag there. So some people are still hanging out to dry, waiting, right? And then the few of us that did get it, we were restricted in spending, and our doors were closed, and it was impossible to spend, and it wasn't the money we needed for the things that we needed to pay for. And it's just so incredibly frustrating to have a bank account with money in it that you can't spend. It freaks me out. It doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, we realized here in Arizona that if we were going to survive as a restaurant industry, as independent restaurants, small restaurants, that we were going to have to fend for ourselves, and we would have to in some way figure out what we think we needed to survive, in a way learn how to govern ourselves. When I shut down my restaurant on the 19th of March, I went home and I penned a letter to Governor Ducey, and I stayed up to like 3 in the morning writing this thing. And I'm like, I figured out what I need. I know what we need. Like, if he did these 5 things, I could at least float for this like next, grace period. And within 2 days, I had over 1,200 business owners sign on to my letter, and we sent it to the governor. And we did get a couple of things, but we didn't get most of them. And but the point of that is this is a tight-knit community, restaurants. And when you are a restaurant owner, or you're a chef, you're working like in the trenches in a way, it's intense, and it takes a certain type of people. And there's a lot of cohesion. There's not rivalry. It's not like we're competition for each other. We all know that it's symbiotic, and when one restaurant or bar or eatery, whatever, it survives, then we all do. It's this beautiful ecosystem. So we formed the Arizona Small Restaurant Coalition, and it's bars, restaurants, even some other small businesses. And it's been able to keep our politicians on the state level, and even citywide across the state, aware of that, the fact that we're still here, and we understand that they have a lot to do and we're here to help. And I think that's really the heart of the matter, is that we have to recognize that our politicians are all doing what they feel is the best, and there's a lot on their plate. They have more coming at them than we could ever imagine. It's an intense industry to be in, right? Politics. So if there's something that has to be done, it's our responsibility to let them know. So it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing. They're not ignoring you. It's not that they don't like you or want to like sidestep your needs. What we realized in Arizona is that you have to say what you need. You have to tell them, and you can't do it alone. Everybody has to let them know. So we still have ASRC, and it is active and alive. We just launched a campaign yesterday to get our congressional delegates to sign on to the Restaurants Act, or to co-sponsor. And I'm working with the Independent Restaurant Coalition, so they work on a federal level. There's something that can be done on every level, and it's really as simple as just letting your elected officials know that you actually need something. And if you can come with a solution, that's even better, because it makes it easier for them. So what I found, that input from constituents is very well received. And you would be surprised how few people actually just pick up the phone or send an email.
Speaking of that, Chef Gregory Gourdet, you know, I know we were we're very fortunate to just have your congressman who authored this bill, Earl Blumenauer, on this webinar. I know you've worked with him before. You've done, just as Danielle was speaking about, you've had dialogues with him. How has that been for you in the past, having conversations with staffers, with Congress people? How did you get in touch with them? What was that relationship building like for you?
Well, I'm definitely in a very lucky position, because Congressman Blumenauer is my congressman, and he does represent the district that I live in. So, ever since I did start policy work, it's been very, very smooth, because he is just so on board with so many issues that are really important to small independent restaurants in America, and organic farming, and a lot of things that are really important to our industry. But through the work with the IRC and us just really trying to get as many people behind this, as many leaders behind this, and just the importance of this being a bipartisan bill that truly represents all of America, and all the states and all the different facets of small businesses across the country. What we're seeing is, it's really just about first reaching out to businesses within the community, and speaking to chefs in those communities, restaurant owners in those communities, seeing how COVID has impacted their business, speaking to them and seeing kind of where they've been, how their leadership decisions has affected, their ability to kind of pivot throughout this whole thing, and just asking for meetings. We meet with staffers first, and then we slowly make our way to try to get, into that meeting with other congressmen and senators as well. And I think, honestly, our leaders want to listen. This is something that affects us all. I think, restaurants are the one place where, a lot of leaders and politicians, either they enjoy eating there. A lot of leaders are, related to farming or the land themselves, so there's a close connection there. So when we talk about restaurants, and we talk about industry, and we talk about farms, and we talk about living off the land, this is something that's important to a lot of people that lead us, a lot of people in DC, and these are all topics that they can relate to really closely, and something that just kind of brings America together. So really just, they're ready to listen, and the stories that, just the stories we've heard here from Danielle and Sue and Bobby about their businesses, these are very common stories that, you could hear from any city in every state. And, our leaders are listening to these stories. It's just getting in front of them.
Great. Sue Betty, I'm sorry, I mispronounced Sue Betty's name. Oh, apologies. So, you know, you're in Vermont, you're working there, and you've been involved with the IRC, the Independent Restaurant Coalition. Why do you think it's important for specifically, you know, chefs, chef owners, chefs like yourself to get involved and to share your stories? Like, what is it about the storytelling that you think is important to promote change, and what's your experience been?
Well, Congressman Blumenauer just told us it matters, and it really does. I think that, like Gregory said, our elected officials are ready to listen, but we also have to recognize there are a lot of voices and a lot of industry voices out there, and we need to really shine through all of that to make sure that folks know how distressed our industry is. I found what inspires me all the time is our community and our restaurant community and our colleagues. And just imagine a lot of folks on the webinar today are feeling like me, and it's a little bit overwhelming. And you're trying to hold your business together, and you're watching your colleagues' businesses close. And maybe it's not clear to you if like the public really understands. So there's some parts of this that are disheartening. And what I think is most important is retaining the optimism, the energy to do the work right now. Because the work right now is to tell our story, to reach out to our elected officials at all levels, and to make sure they know that in order to make it through this, we need the Restaurants Act. And it's a big deal that we have a bill in the House and in the Senate. It is huge. We have momentum. Congressman Blumenauer just let us know we have 90 plus co-sponsors and rising. And there's a real shot here that we're going to see something that's going to save our industry. And I think that remembering that there's momentum, remembering that there's colleagues from across the country making those calls is the energy that I use to keep going. And even though I'm racing around the restaurant trying to make things happen here, my real job has to be to make sure that Gregory's restaurant is there, Bobby's restaurant is there, Danielle's restaurant is there. So when I feel like I don't have the energy or I'm not really up to kind of doing the work, I think about my colleagues and I pick up the phone and I write the email, and I think about the 1,400 Vermont restaurants that I want to see everyone on the other side of this. So I think just understanding how much pressure we're all under. One thing I just want to share is we can do this together, and we can do it for each other, and we can do it for our team members, and we can do it for our communities. And if we do the work right now and follow the momentum of this bill, we've really got the best shot to seeing the other side of this together.
Thank you. And off of that, Bobby, I'm gonna go back to you. So for the folks who are attending this, who are getting our emails, who are getting emails from the Independent Restaurant Coalition, how can they reach out to their congressperson, to their senator, to their representative, to let them know that they should be supporting the Restaurants Act as well?
Well, thanks for the question, because I think anybody listening right now after Sue's inspirational, man, I'm like fired up I'm about to jump off this call right now and start calling some more people. Thank you, Sue. Awesome. But she's right. And, there's a couple different ways. Of course, you can just go to the website and you can email them. You can call them. And that's usually the first step. There's a lot, there's 8,000 bills presented usually a year. 8,000 bills, that's a lot of bills for 100 senators to look at, or how many ever congressmen there are to look at. That's a lot of bills. So you can do that. But one thing I do to find these congressmen and find these contacts is we're in the restaurant industry. There are people that dine with you out there. Everyone on the call has people who dine with you, who has a contact with somebody in office, and you just ask them. You just say, Hi, I'm Bobby. You dine with me. Do you by any chance happen to know Congressman Joe in our district's contact? Oh, you do? Can you make an introduction to me? And just start that way. Think about it. Not everyone's Congressman Earl. If I'm 50 years old and I've been in the restaurant business my whole life, and if you would have asked me March 1st how many jobs we made up in the US economy, I wouldn't have known. So if I didn't know as a restaurateur, how do you expect our Congress people to learn? They need to know from us. And we had a call last week with Congressman Schiff from California. Holy moly. He said to Carolyn Stein and I, he was like, guys, you just got to get this to everybody. This is the easiest thing to sign on. I got the call. I was jumping up and down. That's what it is. We just got to turn over every stone, reach out to your guests, reach out to your suppliers. David Nayfeld in San Francisco is the champion of calling suppliers. So he might call a dairy cooperative or whatever and say, hey, do you have a direct line with your congressman? There's so many different ways. And remember, don't be scared. They work for us. They put their hand up to be a congressman and a senator. No one forced them to do that, right? So they're there to work for us. Doesn't matter if they're 5-term or 1-term. They're there for us, and we just got to knock on the door and tell them our unique needs and why we need this bill.
Excellent. So we are going to start kind of transitioning into the question period. We've got several great questions and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And if we don't have the exact answer for you right away, hopefully we'll be able to come back with the answer, or at least direct you to where you can find the answer. But I think what I've heard a lot of in this is that it's really important for everyone to use their voice, to, call that US Capitol switchboard, to, reach out to folks in their network to see who might be connected, because you're probably more connected than you think you are, and, to use that social media presence. The other thing, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, I think it's pretty recent that they put it up on their site. They have a little flyer so that if you are a restaurant, if you're a business owner and you're open and you're doing takeout, you can include one of these flyers that's about the Restaurant Act, encouraging, some of your diners who want to support you to reach out to their Congress people to really engage on that bill. And then, the other thing is that I heard from several places, including from the representative, is, staffers are great. Always start that dialogue with the staffer. I know Chef Gregory talked about, getting to know the staffers first and kind of working your way up. The staffers have a lot of power. They do. The good ones have their congressperson's ear, and it's really important to engage the staffers as well. So those are some kind of immediate takeaways that I've been hearing. So we have some great questions, and I just posted, I know I saw a few questions about, where do I read the full Restaurants Act? I just posted that in the chat. So if you're looking for the full bill text, that is in the chat function. I also posted a link to this really great bill summary, because bills can be quite long and unwieldy. And this is about, like a 2-page, 2.25 page summary of the bill that I think is really useful, that I posted in the chat as well. And that's been a great resource that we've been circulating, because I think it really gets to a lot of the points. So those are all there. And we will also, share the link to the IRC website, which is saverestaurants.com /take action. That's an easy way for you to email your congressperson. But those are some, easy ways to get involved. So, I think a good question, and I'm not sure if anyone on this is able to answer this, but how will the Restaurants Act affect or benefit, of course, the restaurant owners, the chefs, but also, other folks who are involved with the restaurant industry, whether that's purveyors, whether that's employees, staff, restaurant workers. How does this, play out for them? How does that benefit them? So you want to take that one, Bobby?
Well, unlike the PPP, which was an 8-week fix for an 18-month problem, the Restaurant Act gets us to the bridge to the other side. It's revenue replacement. Okay, so you're going to take 2019's revenue, you're going to project 2020, you're going to get in the form of a grant, as long as you use it properly, funds that you can run your business through this wildly unprecedented and challenging times. You can take care of those purveyors. You can take care of those employees. You can staff accordingly. You can take care of your landlords. All these people that are, part of what we call the food chain. I look at the restaurant as we're kind of, think of it like biology. We're a cornerstone species in the economic system of the U.S. economy. Just like if you take the sea otter out of the sea, the whole thing caves in. You take us out, the whole U.S. economy caves in. And so this Restaurant Act takes care of those farmers that need to have bills paid. Earlier, a few months ago, I heard a staggering, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but one of our, Leoni, one of our co-teammates on the IRC said that there was a food purveyor with $1.4 billion of accounts receivable that they needed that was over 60 days late. We can't have that. We need to help support these suppliers that take so good care of us. We need to be able to be busy enough that linen companies can have truck drivers to deliver the linen. So the Restaurant Act gives us revenue replacement so we can touch all those pieces, from the landlord to the employees to the suppliers.
Thank you. And this kind of touches on a few other questions that we had come in. The Restaurants Act is different than the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act is a really big bill with a lot of relief and a lot of stimulus across the board on a lot of different issues, including, unemployment insurance. It extends that. It includes SNAP provisions. It includes another stimulus check. So there are lots of things that is in the HEROES Act that are very, very important. They're very important, but they are not specific to restaurants. And so that's where a lot of the divergence is. The HERO Act is in front of Congress. There's some support for it, more in the House than the Senate, but it is not specific to restaurants, whereas the Restaurants Act is specific to restaurants. And as Bobby said, unlike the PPP or EIDL, it is again specific to restaurants and not just, kind of small businesses, ideally small businesses in general. But also, the PPP is a loan that had a lot of restrictions around forgiveness that were difficult for some people, especially since they kind of changed halfway through. There were adjustments made to those. And eligible expenses for the Restaurants Act are much broader than I think they were with the PPP. They include payroll, benefits, mortgage, rent, utilities, maintenance, supplies, including protective equipment, cleaning materials, food, debt obligations to suppliers, and any other expenses deemed necessary by the Secretary of the Treasury. So it's a much larger group of kind of things that you can spend, you would be able to spend that funding on. But again, and this came in from another question, it is incumbent upon using those funds appropriately and to retain workers, maintain payroll, and any unspent funds. So if you cease operations before the end of 2020, unspent funds must be returned. That's a question that came in. So there are some restrictions around it. Unspent funds must be returned. And you can read more of the details about it again in this one sheet. But I think by and large, I mean, the reason we have so many folks on here supporting it and so eloquently speaking to it is it does a lot of the support work that the PPP and the EIDL loans just didn't do, just because they're not built for restaurants. So, and I think again, Bobby, I'm sorry to keep going to you on this, but do you have any sense, any of you, on what you're hearing in terms of, everyone wants to know how likely is it to pass? That's a question we're getting a lot of, and I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you, But I think the fact that there is bipartisan support for this bill in both the House and the Senate is very, very telling, in a very good way. Does anybody want to add anything to that? Optimistic view, maybe. I don't know, overly optimistic.
Well, I think we look at it this way. I think we've got a chance. Sue put it perfectly when she said, oh my gosh, we've got a bill in the Senate and the House. We've got a chance. And so if you've got a chance, everyone on this call's got to push. You know, there are competing bills. You know, Senator Mark Rubio wants to just redo the PPP. You've got the Bennett-Young bill from Senator Michael Bennett of Colorado and Todd Young of Indiana. That's an interesting bill. But really, we're a unique industry that have a unique set of problems, and we need this bill. I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it. I do think it's rising, and I think it's rising, unfortunately, because of a very drastic situation. If you would have asked me a month ago, I would have thought we had a 10% chance. I think it's risen much, much more than that. I mean, we almost have 100 Congress people sign on. But I implore everyone on this call, everyone who's listening, everyone who downloads, help us with this push, help us carry this water. We've got a chance, you know, we really do. One of the reasons is when you have, you know, you're going to see the jobs report come out tomorrow. It's going to look a little bit better. Why? Well, because everyone was using their PPP last month when they used that jobs report. That's going to be expiring. California just closed in-room dining. It's really, really, it is of the essence right now. We hear it on our calls in the morning. Gregory, Sue, and Danielle and I, we need to help these restaurants out. So we've got a shot, but we need everybody. We need everybody as constituents to call.
Absolutely. So even if you're not a chef, you're not a restaurant owner, you can still call. You can still call your congressperson, your senator, to voice your support for this bill. And you know, just a point of clarification, if someone did ask, and that is entirely correct, as I believe the congressman stated, the grant, the restaurant grant, that is part of the Restaurants Act, is to cover the difference between revenues from 2019 and projected revenues through 2020. So that's what that funding is for, to cover the difference between how you were doing last year and how you were projected to do this year because of COVID. So I hope that clears up a few things. And I know there have been some technical questions that have come in, and you know, a lot of those are available on this sheet, but similar to I think as we saw with the PPP, they are trying to project out as much as they can, but there are some things that just aren't totally clear yet. But another question came in. It will be administered by the Department of the Treasury. So the Department of the Treasury would be administering the funds from the Restaurants Act. So I hope I cleared up a few of those items. So I feel like we covered most of the questions that we are able to in this short amount of time. I feel like as the Restaurants Act moves forward, we will be, moves forward, knock on wood, I'm still going to be optimistic. We can certainly do like another one of these webinars that as it gets closer to passage, as it passes, doing one on the more kind of technical, aspects of, how do I apply for it? How do I get it? What documentation do I need to have? That information just isn't available right now. It's a little too early. So we'll try to get to that once we kind of, get closer to passage. But, I would love to ask each of you to kind of provide any parting words of wisdom. I know I've heard a lot of, get involved, get engaged, use your voice, call your congressperson. But any final words before we, end the webinar?
Sure.
I mean, sorry, Gregory. I think
we'll go with Gregory first.
Well, first of all, just thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope everyone listening just feels inspired to just learn more about the Restaurants Act and find ways to support it. Our industry is in quite dire need, and of the million jobs that the hospitality industry provides, there's 5 million more that branches off of that, that supports hospitality, from winemaking to manufacturing to farms. So we're talking about 16 million Americans with this whole thing. So, we just have to keep on fighting. If everyone just does their part to reach out to their leaders, we can get more people signed on. So I think we're just trying to stay razor focused at this time and push the needle forward and save American restaurants.
Great. Sue?
Yeah, I think I just want to thank everyone that made time for the webinar today. And thank you for going for it and for doing all that you can for the Restaurants Act and for our restaurant industry and all that you do. I think that restaurants are a social network that we all need and we're going to need. So just want to acknowledge all the work that everyone's putting in right now and just say thank you. And let's keep the optimism going.
Thank you, Sue. Bobby?
Yeah, I just, thanks, Sue. Thanks, Gregory. Danielle, thank you. Ashley, thanks for having us. I also want to say, remember everyone out there, this is it doesn't matter if you're a dishwasher, a busboy, a server, a captain, a sommelier, an executive chef, a customer, everyone, an owner, everyone is under a lot of stress right now. All of us are going to go through these waves of emotion that we don't have control over. Please, even though we can't hug people right now, give them a virtual hug, because everyone's going to, at a different time, a different day, is going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel really, really stressed. And we all have to be great hospitality people to our coworkers and our guests and our employees, and let everyone know we're all trying to get through this.
Thank you. And Danielle?
I'd just like everybody to remember that even though you might be maybe shut down and you're stuck at home, or you're trying to figure out how to operate under a new business model, we as chefs, restaurateurs, always feel the weight of the world on our shoulders, right? And it can feel very lonely, and it can feel very difficult, but that's what we're accustomed to in our industry, right? We have that grit. But I want you to all remember that you're not actually alone. It doesn't matter which four walls that you're inside of right now or will be later. You're a part of something tremendous. You're a part of a very strong community. And even if you're not within our industry, you still are a part of our community, because we touch everybody. We bring people together, no matter who you are or what you believe in. We are the fabric of your community. And I want you to know that we're going to make it through this. It can't last forever, but there is a way out, and it's not spinning in circles. We have found a way. We found a way to help everybody is through the Restaurants Act. So please educate yourself, sign on, ask people to support it, and let's try to move forward. And if you're wondering if it's going to help you, it's going to help. It's always going to get better. So let's just do it. Let's just move forward and make it happen so we can get back to what we love.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I just shared one final link. Thank you, Gregory, for sharing that with me, to the Independent Restaurant Coalition site with some social media graphics and other resources for you to, if you're passionate about this and you want to not just call your member of Congress, but also encourage everyone who follows you on social media to do the same. There are some pre-made graphics to make that easier for you to do. And they're just right there available in that link. So in the chat box right now, you have the link to take action. You have the link to share those resources. You have the link to the bill text, and you have the link to this really handy bill summary. But like I said, it's still in the works and there are still some details coming out. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us here today. We have a couple more webinars scheduled for next week. Next Wednesday, July 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It is COVID-19 and local foods, challenges and opportunities. And that's really looking at the full food chain. I know there are some really great food hubs, some farmers who are involved with that one. So it's really, a kind of high-level view of COVID's impact on our food system, and not just what the challenges are, but what the opportunities are to make our food system better coming out of it. And we have one next Thursday at the same day, same time. So July 23rd at 2 p.m. And that's similar in this vein. We're going to be talking to some chefs who've been through our Chefs Bootcamp for Policy and Change program, like Danielle and Gregory, who are on the webinar right now, to talk not specifically about the Restaurants Act, but to kind of go into more, learning to use your voice, why it's so important, why it's so necessary, especially right now, why it's so important, which I think, Sue discussed so eloquently and so beautifully just now. But thank you. Registration for all of those is on our industry support webpage at jamesbeard.org/industry support webinars. You can visit them there. You can find this recording tomorrow, as well as all of our past recordings there as well. So please check that out. Thank you everyone for joining us on the panel and signing on to attend this webinar, and we'll keep you updated. Sign up for the Independent Restaurant Coalition's mailing list. They have great information. Sign up for our mailing list. We've been doing a lot of work on this and really amplifying the work that the IRC is doing. So if you want to stay involved, if you want to stay in the know of what's happening around the Restaurants Act, sign up for those. And it's saverestaurants.com for the IRC and jamesbeard.org for the James Beard Foundation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
See you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.